Beyond Mars, outline for screenplay. Stan Brenner, late 40s, our hero, is the Rover consultant. When he was in his early 20s, he was the lead engineer on the Challenger shuttle. He'll never live down feeling responsible for all who died on that mission. Being the head engineer on Opportunity should have been his redeeming achievement. Oppie shared its science from Mars for over 15 years. He just can't let it go. He's currently teaching engineering and astronomy in high school. Captain Chorney is a modest man in his 50s. No family, even-keeled and level-headed. Made the sacrifice of having a family to live out his dreams to fly among the stars. Because of this, there is a subtle sadness about him. First Officer Jet, 30s, is a strong female kick-ass. Her training in self-defense shines as much as her tech savvy and leadership skills. Problem solver. Hates aliens. Bellamy, 20s. This androgynous science officer is a jokester. Tall and sinewy, she's carefree and finds humor in almost everything. Accused of being too upbeat. Repulsed by religion. Guy Levinson is their ship's navigator. Alongside being a great pilot, he also has enhanced sensory skills and can sometimes perceive events from the near future, a handy guy to have around. Presley Mathers is a feisty, well-toned, attractive female in her late 30s. She has worked for NASA as a tech engineer for over a decade. This is the mission she signed up for and always has dreamed of since she was a little girl. Knows this ship like the back of her hand. Crash landing on Mars. Cold open, a fiery wreckage hurls through space towards Mars' surface. Inside, a severed droid head scans the area to upload precious digital cargo containing the last digital DNA of a biological species. The scan finds a faint signal on Mars' surface. Zeroes in. Locks. The upload begins as the ship is beginning to burn up in the atmosphere. Just as the progress bar finishes, the ship crashes into Mars, exploding on impact. A mile away, the sand-covered rover, Opportunity, lights up. It moves. Years of dust and sand slide off the camera head. The inbound message inside the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The clock reads 3:15 a.m. The room is silent and empty. Various shots, a computer screen wakes from its screensaver, showing a bright, blank screen. Text appears on the screen. Inbound message. More text appears. Downloading transmission. The screen glitches and the control room lights come on. The air conditioning starts, blowing a ribbon tied to a wall vent. The screen fills with data from top to bottom, scrolling rapidly. The monitor speaker emits odd clicks and chirps. Two mid-level looking employees, Bob and Nathan, in their 30s and wearing JPL name badges, burst in and study the monitor. They exchange wary glances. The Situation Room. Bob and Nathan walk with a military-looking female general in her 50s to a Situation Room at NASA. Nathan updates the general. "It's data of unknown origin, sir. Somehow from one of our dead rovers. It's alien intel, we think. It looks friendly, General." Nathan explains that the data includes space-time folding calculations, frequency teleportation, and quantum tunneling far beyond our current understanding. The data dump lasted for 3 days and then abruptly stopped. The rover went dark again. General Cope says, "I get it. You're good at your job. Now tell me so I can tell the president. He wants you to prep a manned mission to Mars as soon as possible. The president wants to recover Opportunity. This could be first contact. They need to contact Stan Brenner for the mission. Find him. Intro Stan, as he teaches in a high school. Establish blonde kid, Avery, teens, and his question to Stan that convinces him this kid will surely be an astronaut one day." Several NASA brass come walking in. The students all stop and watch in awe. Stan is asked to go to Mars. Mic drop. Stan stammers but says yes. However, we can tell a concern lingers in his brain. SpaceX meeting. News of the data travels fast. SpaceX executives want to be the first to Mars, driven by greed and ambition. A coffee shop, Stan shares the news with his wife, Ellen. It comes out here that he never got into the astronaut program due to his claustrophobia. This is obviously not a problem anymore, not for NASA anyway. Stan sighs. Stan gets a call from a friend of his at NASA. Apparently, NASA is short the funding needed. News anchor overview. A news anchor describes the NASA budget concerns and the competition between NASA and SpaceX to reach Mars first. This potential first contact with intelligent life is a major news story. It will take roughly a year and a half to mount such an ambitious endeavor. Title card: a year and 6 months later. SpaceX finishes its preparations first, as NASA runs out of funding. Stan is contacted by SpaceX. The general has pressured them to bring him on as their rover consultant. Stan agrees. SpaceX lifts off for Mars as the world watches. Their crew are on their way to make history. The SpaceX crew is introduced here. They're cold towards Stan. He's seen as an ex-NASA and is not to be trusted. Marooned. 4 months later, the SpaceX mission gets stalled out in space. The ship has experienced a major malfunction. SpaceX is left marooned, floating in space. One of the SpaceX crew, Ned, 30s, has it out for Stan, accuses him of being a NASA mole and sabotaging their mission. Also, NASA could get there first and steal all the glory. Of course, Stan denies this. SpaceX, tail between its legs, has to ask for help. A news anchor reports on the emergency NASA rescue mission now in full swing. They interview the NASA mission donor. Intro Professor Theodore Waverly, a U.S. billionaire physicist who has agreed to help fund the NASA mission on 2 conditions. 1, they complete the journey to Mars, and 2, he and his assistant, Sammy, 20s, join the mission. They intend to stay on Mars to conduct experiments. Waverly says, "We've already begun testing this new technology from this alien intelligence. Quantum tunneling cannot be explained through the laws of classical mechanics." Heisenberg's uncertainty principle comes into play here. Uncertainty allows for fluctuations. It's like a particle can borrow energy for a short period, enabling it to tunnel through space-time. Up till now, it's only been used in quantum computing, tunnel diodes, and tunneling microscopes. Think of it. It took the New Horizons probe 9 years to reach Pluto in the Kuiper Belt. A round trip would take roughly 18 years. Now imagine doing that in, say, a week. Beat. But conducting tests of this nature really should be in a controlled, isolated environment. It's paramount. Scientific isolation. Unexpected outcomes won't interfere with Earth's natural processes or existing technologies. The isolation there also allows for better observation and analysis without any external interference, if you know what I mean. It's decided that Waverly, Sammy, and his payload will be approved by NASA. They will accompany the mission. Title card. 5 months later, NASA lifts off for the long trip. The crew hunkered down. The SpaceX murder attempt. During Stan's sleeping hours, his oxygen to his quarters is mysteriously shut off. This causes his O2 levels to crash, triggering chronic hypoxia. Stan's body falls into a deep coma. Title card. 4 months later, the NASA ship arrives. The 2 ships hard dock together as one, but emotionally they are still very separate. SpaceX is grateful, but there is an unsaid tension between them. Repairs commence. Stan's NASA team insists on taking him into their ship to examine him. Under this new care, Stan awakens from his coma. The NASA ship medic, Ron Ames, in his 30s, suspects someone tried to kill him. This was intentional. The NASA crew is fueled with disdain. Stan is in recovery now. Stan is brought up to speed on what's happened. They all need to watch their backs. A spacewalk involving several from each team commences. This repair sequence is tense as both crews don't trust each other. During the walk, as the hatches open and several crew are maneuvering large bulky replacement parts outside, a huge UFO suddenly appears next to the 2 ships, a ginormous corkscrew shape. All chrome, no windows. This kills all the power and backup power in both Earth ships and in all the O2 suits. The hatch to the ship is also locked in the open position during this sequence. It's a clusterfuck of panic and manual emergency systems. The captain yells, "Get the crew back inside before they suffocate." A circumstantial situation plays out between Bellamy from the NASA crew and Ned from the SpaceX crew. Bellamy risks his own life to help Ned, and is saved. When power returns, the UFO has mysteriously vanished, not to be tracked or found. The SpaceX crew is grateful for Bellamy's heroic deed. Stan eyes them all. The mission continues. They receive a recorded message from NASA. It's of extreme importance. The crew assemble to watch the pre-recorded transmission. On the monitor, Nathan says, "We have continued to decode the massive data dump we received from OPI over the 3-day period from last September. We have some disturbing news." The crew exchange looks. Nathan continues, "Stay away from Mars became the clear message. Whatever is communicating with us is apparently being hunted by synthetic aliens referred to as octophage. The rover has become its safe haven. Don't ask us how. This intelligence is protecting the last of a digital DNA of an ancient biological species called the Mondar that have all but been exterminated. It takes time to decode the language. We're still finding out more, but these Mondar were supposedly the very first biological beings in the known universe. For some reason, it's protecting the DNA and won't download it. Looks like the buck stops with us now." Nathan swallows hard. "There's something else. We have every reason to believe something happened when you encountered the UFO. We believe one of these things, an octophage, is on your ship." A beat goes by. Bob enters with a folder. Nathan adds, "Bob ran some numbers." Bob enters and explains. "Newton's second law, force equals mass times acceleration. Simply put, you weigh more now than you did when you left." Nathan chimes in again. "You may very well be leading one of these things directly to the rover for its termination and eventually your own. Anyway, it explains why the UFO came and went. They dropped off a passenger." The crew all clock each other with looks of trepidation. As Nathan continues speaking, we follow Stan as he investigates his attempted murder. Finds the oxygen shut off. Looks at the security footage. An unknown shadowy figure messes with the valves. Nathan gets to the point saying, "Now, here's some intel so you know what you're dealing with. This is an alien synthetic. This octophage, its intelligence has been neural mapped from a cephalopod or an octopus, including its form, only bigger. Octophage have distributed intelligence, or DI, meaning their arms can think for themselves. They can make a perfect copy and match their surroundings, your ship, the corridors, even you. Octophage have hyper-fast camouflage reaction time. This, coupled with its ability to see with its skin, make it a formidable foe. They have spatial memory and can plan. They are thinking, cognitive creatures that can transform into the likeness of its enemy or even into directed energy weapons. This can't be easy to hear, I know. It knows what other creatures are scared of and can exploit that fear. They're adept at strategy and manipulation. They probably know to keep some of you alive, which would be paramount to it finding the rover and destroying it. But I wouldn't doubt it knowing it can probably kill some of you as well. I'm very sorry to be the bearer of this very bad news." Tension mounts as the remainder of the journey proves to be very stressful for the crew. This synthetic creature, giving off no heat signal, and its camo capabilities, make it extremely hard to find, let alone track. Several of the crew inquire about Waverly's very large payload, but he avoids any specifics. Waverly and his assistant privately inspect their payload, looking for the creature in a tense scene. We see a large, mysterious, sealed container among their payload. No sign of any creature anywhere. Stan gets help from Presley and hacks a motion sensor to sense the chemical makeup of this alien bounty hunter. The plan is to kill it, or at least isolate it in the ship. A tense scene plays out with several crew members armed to the hilt. Sensor readings lead them to the octophage. It's big. As they get closer to it, they see nothing. Suddenly, the floor slides out from underneath them. It's camouflaged. They've been standing right on it. Jean, 30s, a corporal from the cargo bay, screams. The corridor floor transforms into a large tentacle. Its skin hardens and morphs into razor-sharp openings, a texture resembling a deadly cheese grater. It strikes at Jean, shredding her into bits. A torrent of her blood sprays the others, who all step back and shriek in horror. The remainder of Stan's crew turn and bolt. But the octophage, as if sensing their plan, turns back on a dime, flipping a complete 180 in the corridor. It's gaining on them as it's transforming, reflecting its environment with a slight out-of-registration time lag. Billings, in the back, a co-pilot from SpaceX, 20s, is snatched up. The others turn back just in time to see him squeezed so tight his head explodes like a water balloon. The last two with Stan's team rush to an open bay door. They bolt through it and pound the lock seal button. As the door is closing, there is a thundering sound heard all around them, but they see nothing. The section seals off, but Stan isn't sure the octophage didn't get through. Arrival on Mars. The ships are now undocked. The NASA ship will orbit Mars while the SpaceX is better suited for the landing. Stan's hacked detector seems to be worthless now, as if the octophage altered its chemistry somehow. The strictest protocols are put in place to keep it from entering the SpaceX ship and getting down to the Mars surface. The NASA ship orbits Mars while the SpaceX ship goes in for the landing. They land on Mars. Their landing is off by a half-mile. Waverly and Sammy, along with several others, get suited up and disembark the craft. The offloading of their payload onto the Mars surface is punctuated by Captain Chorney saying, "Mankind's next large step. History happens." Dissolve 2 later, Waverly's small compound dwelling and lab have been set up. The large container remains sealed and has a tarp over it. He and his assistant are saluted by the captain. Captain Chorney says, "Here's to Mars's first outpost. And what better than 2 physicists? NASA thanks you for all your support, Professor Waverly. Keep in touch. We're expecting big things from you both." Waverly smiles and says his goodbyes. Back on the ship, there's conflict over which team will go to the rover. To keep things cool, a mix of both crews are chosen by Captain Chorney. They suit up with Stan and leave the ship. Their body cameras transmit audio and video back. Encounter at the rover. The armed away crew begins the trek to the rover. Landry, 30s, the captain of the SpaceX crew, takes control. Chorney notes the power play. Norris, one of the SpaceX crew, 40s, reacts to a beep from his side computer. Crew member Norris says, "Cap'n, we have a hail from the con. Weight just shifted considerably on board our ground ship. It got lighter." Captain Landry from SpaceX says, "What the fuck?" Looks of paranoia are shared. They continue at a brisk pace. With the octophage's camo capabilities, it could be anywhere. Coming over a rise, there sits the rover, dormant amongst a boulder-littered landscape. Stan walks up to it. The rover appears dead. As he clears the dust off its solar panels, he smiles, sentimentally. He cracks open a case he carries and plugs in a monitor to the rover along with a charger. A red light begins blinking. Begins checking its systems and subsystems. Norris's computer beeps again. Norris says, "A frequency just went out with our coordinates, Cap'n." Landry replies saying, "Strange, it's none of us." Suddenly, the rocky landscape comes alive, revealing the no longer camouflaged octophage. Back on the ground ship, the crew reacts to what they're seeing on the monitors. Back with the away crew, all pull their weapons and begin firing. One whip of the octophage's arm wipes all of them 30 feet backward. It grabs a crew member. In a single motion, its suckers rip his spacesuit off, leaving him gasping for oxygen from the thin Martian atmosphere. Blood vessels bulge and burst. Anderson, a grunt from the SpaceX team, 20s, bulldogs the octophage. He manages to get on the thing's back and pulls a knife from his pack. Begins stabbing at it. Black scalding fluid begins to squirt out, burning him through his suit. One of the other 7 of the octophage's arms plucks him off and smashes him against a boulder so hard his body explodes in an aerosol of red. In rapid succession, the creature scoops up the entire crew and consumes their bodies with its hidden razor-sharp beak. After each is consumed, it expels their entire blood volume from an iris-shaped orifice under its belly. It turns to find Stan. Stan, thinking fast, has already disappeared into a nearby rocky canyon and is nowhere to be seen. The monochromatic POV of the octophage scans the terrain. The octophage goes bounding back to the ship, thundering on its large tentacles. Stan tries to keep up but can't run that fast. Stan frantically tries to send a warning message back to the crew in Waverly. Gets 0 response. Shit. Back at the ship, Stan watches from a distance as the octophage scales the ship, looking for a way in. The main hatch opens. Stan sees this and yells, "No!" The beast enters the ship and the hatch closes behind it. Stan hangs his head. Inside the ship, the octophage stops, realizing the ship is empty. From outside, the ship suddenly explodes in a colossal fireball. The thunderous explosion mushrooms slowly up into the Martian atmosphere. Astonished, Stan looks on. behind a large rock formation, reveal the remaining crew, including Waverly and Sammy, all safe and sound in 02 suits. Apparently, they controlled the airlock remotely. Stan hails them on the comm. At a distance, they see Stan come out, waving his arms, smiling. It's revealed they've retrieved their jetpacks, including Stan's, to achieve their plan to rejoin the orbiting NASA ship and return home. All together now, they thank Stan, who is grateful for their lives. Stan and the remaining crew return to the rover location so Stan can strip the drives and retrieve this very precious cargo. But they find the rover gone. No tracks. Zero trace. They're completely baffled. Stan is dumbfounded. Waverly and Sammy safely return to their compound and again say their goodbyes. With jetpacks on, Stan and the remaining crew all ascend through the Mars atmosphere towards the orbiting NASA ship. Stan's claustrophobia kicks in. This sequence is very tedious. He hyperventilates and almost passes out. Presley shares her concentration hack with him, and he regulates. They reach the ship and board. Stan sends NASA a message about the missing rover and updates them. Meanwhile, a NASA message has been waiting for them. Bob and Nathan from NASA have a new recording. They have decoded more of the info. Waverly, down on Mars, is getting this message at the same time. Nathan explains, here's more about the Mondar cargo on the rover. Apparently they created this AI synthetic species which revolted and overthrew their makers. The best we can assess was that the AIs repurposed these octophage as killing machines. You're damn lucky to be alive. They consume not to digest, but to annihilate. As these Mondar were being overtaken, DNA safety pods were ejected into space to protect the DNA of their historic biological species. Bob adds, the missing piece to the puzzle came from our James Webb telescope. We photographed a crashed ship on Mars near where Oppie was. We think it was one of those pods. Stan, that's how your rover became a depository for the most valuable thing in the universe, Mondar DNA. The crew are all silent. Their faces reflect the weight of the moment. Stan mutters to himself, we have to find the rover and save the Mondar DNA. Waverly hails the ship over the video feed. In light of this new information, Waverly reveals his secret payload at his compound base camp. It resembles a compact, advanced spacecraft. Puzzled, the crew surround the monitor. Professor Waverly takes a breath and says, my company has been busy the last year and a half building and experimenting with this new technology. Quantum tunneling. This craft has been created specifically for this purpose. Yes, it needs to be tested. And yes, it's a potentially dangerous technology. Creating an unstable wormhole is nobody's idea of a good time. But it seems to me if ever there was a reason to take a risk, it's now. We'd be saving what sounds like an ancient, advanced biological species. Mankind has everything to gain. Waverly then explains the craft. The alien technology given to us has been integrated on board. It also has robust shielding against temporal and spatial anomalies, with redundancy in critical systems to ensure safe travel both ways. This prototype interior is a bit sterile, but it seats 6 comfortably and hopefully gets great mileage. He smiles. If you can track the rover's location, I suggest we take it out for a spin. The crew are all speechless. Suddenly Stan remembers the monitor and charger he attached to the rover. The rover might be trackable. He sends out a tracking scan for the rover. Tense hours go by, waiting for a response. Nothing. It's gone. Late that night, Stan and the crew are called to the main console. Nathan has sent a message, FY, Oppie is still with us, sending out a repeated SOS from a dwarf moon in the Kuiper Belt. Waverly, shaking his head, says, the edge of our solar system. Stan thinks, since the rover isn't biological in nature, that the octophage couldn't consume it and guarantee its destruction. Maybe it sent out Oppie's coordinates for it to be picked up? It's possible Oppie is still intact on this dwarf moon, but the clock is ticking. Stan suggests doing a test with Waverly's quantum tunneling craft. They unanimously vote Stan down. There are still too many unanswered questions. It's way too dangerous. Stan wants to at least see what NASA thinks. A message comes back. The suits at NASA say no, no way. Way too risky. They are ordered to come home at once. It's over. Stan is bummed. All's lost. He gets an idea. He sends a private message to NASA and Professor Waverly. A response returns from both. Stan's face brightens. Stan calls the crews back together again. NASA has cleared them to test the craft and continue the mission if all agree. Bonuses for all crew members are offered courtesy of Professor Waverly. Stan smiles, just some paperwork to sign. Cut to the crew, all signing legal waivers. Later, the crew are all in Waverly's base camp watching. For the test, Waverly's intention is to travel to the opposite side of Mars and back. He will go by himself. Landing coordinates are input, and all preparations are made for this round trip. Reveal the craft. It's a utilitarian-looking, modular design craft that contains advanced scientific equipment. Waverly powers it up. He explains that at its heart is a compact yet powerful energy mechanism that generates the field necessary to manipulate space-time. Waverly gets in and closes the hatch. The crew all move away. As a hum from its battery-powered engine gets up to speed, the entire vessel becomes less and less opaque, and it's gone. Popping into existence on the shadow side of Mars proves to be treacherous, as Waverly's craft lands on the side of a steep mountain, causing it to instantly begin careening and spinning downward. Waverly yells, typing madly at the control console keyboard. He's headed for a 1,000-foot drop-off. He can't get it to work. He goes off the cliff. Relieved, he realizes gravity is only 38% on Mars, so he's falling slowly. Suddenly he realizes he's headed directly for jagged rocks jutting upwards that will skewer his ship like a shiksha bob. Plummeting, he's typing as fast as he can. Just before the jagged rocks get to his windshield, the craft pops out of the scene. The craft returns back to Waverly's compound. The crew all cheer. Waverly slowly exits the craft, completely blown away. Ames quickly runs vitals on him. Waverly checks out healthy as a horse. All systems go. But not everyone wants to be a hero. There is some resistance. Jenna, 20s, refuses to go. Stan's crew is dwindling. Captain Chorney and Bob at NASA have calculated a logical launch window for the quantum tunnel. The window is 6 days from now. Late that night, Stan tries again to remotely power up Oppie. He sends out the command. Later, an emergency low battery warning signal comes back. Oppie's faintly on. Stan turns on Oppie's camera. Minutes go by. We see Oppie's POV, a writhing sea of octophage. The power dies on the rover. Stan keeps this to himself. All are armed with weapons and in their 02 suits. They are ready. The elephant in the room is that, in less than a millionth of a second, they all will be over 2.65 billion miles away. Dropped into an unknown place, with God knows how much atmosphere and among some of the most deadly creatures in the universe, not the most ideal setting for only a second test. Any glitch and they could all be zapped into non-existence. Game over. They all quietly prepare, nerves frayed. They triple-check their 02 suits and weapons. Babinski and Billings will stay behind with Jenna. The moment has come. They all shake hands and hug and wish themselves good luck. The Kuiper crew with Stan step into the craft. Activation, power on. On a monitor, numbers fly by too fast to discern, becoming a blur. The crew all clock each other. Space around the ship begins to bend. The crew experiences disorienting visuals and intense gravitational forces. The control deck overloads and the power goes off. Malfunction. The ship with the crew vanishes. Now by themselves, Babinski, Billings, and Jenna are all speechless. Smash cut to. In a sudden blinding blue flare, they emerge in a raging sleet storm headed for the frozen dwarf moon of Injog. Levinson calculates the gravity and 02 levels. Waverly dodges frozen chunks and debris that clutter the atmosphere. The crew are terrified. They approach a large, hollowed-out crater and what looks like a mining facility on the surface just adjacent to the opening. As Waverly maneuvers the craft, he shares some knowledge with the others. Just the remnants from our early solar system frozen volatiles, bits of asteroids. Mostly made up of water, nitrogen, ammonia, and methane. Methane? Hum? Makes sense. That mining facility likely produces synthetic fuels. We may be bumping into more of your 8-legged friends. It's an unwelcoming and formidable-looking place. The crater is as round as a football field is long and excavated roughly a half-mile deep. A death fog wafts up from below. Waverly lands the craft. Chorney looks at his side computer. Chorney warns them, 34% gravity, so take it slow, people. Low temperatures too, watch your thermos. Warily disembarking the craft, our Kuiper crew emerges, Stan, Waverly, Captain Chorney, Jet, Levinson, and Presley, all carrying weapons. They find an unused narrow trail leading down into the dark crater. With much trepidation, they all switch on their helmet flashlights and begin their descent into uncertainty. Decaying creatures of all kinds and varied species embed the walls of what looks like a graveyard of some kind. The common realization is that these skeletons and carcasses are all from different species, a graveyard of biologicals. They pass strange funnel-shaped ribbed tunnels with transparent surfaces behind which a dark fluid of some kind bubbles. Each funnel leads into a swampy blackness. Deeper now, as dim lights from below begin to illuminate, it allows them to switch off their headlamps and travel in the blackness of the shadows. They pass rotting skeletons of many familiar aliens, hundreds of invertebrate species, and a towering pile of unknown alien skeletons. A giant, rotting worm carcass is suspended from the center. Stopping to rest. Stan pulls out his side computer. Good news, Oppie is still there down below, and the Mondar DNA is intact. Stan carefully peers over the edge. Far below, through binoculars, he sees Oppie in the shadows in what looks to be a junkyard of busted hardware, speeders, and dilapidated technology. Looks like Stan was right about Oppie being tagged for junk. Stan, under his breath, says, "Somehow they got it right out from under our noses. Guess humans aren't worth their time." He removes a remote control screen for the rover from his pack, powers it on. Scans for Oppie. Locks onto it. Oppie's in a low-power mode. Oppie's camera scans the area around the rover. It is a bleak landscape. An ominous-looking panorama shows octophage and armed robodroids everywhere. They seem oblivious that Oppie has been powered up. A huge iced-over dome is in the center, surrounded by alien-looking structures that are all covered in layers of massive icicles. These icicles descend from the crater, opening to the ground. Stan times it just right and slowly drives the rover 2 feet forward into a lone shaft of sunlight that barely reaches the bottom. The rover's solar panels silently charge while our crew lay in wait. This is the calm before the storm. They rest. Profound, whispered conversations range from wondering if time back on Earth has been affected by their journey to the Kuiper Belt, to their own mortality, and finally the future of humanity. Stan remarks, "Okay, get some rest, everyone. We're here for a while." Later, Stan fully powers up the rover. Stan is blown away to communicate with the alien AI on board Oppie. It's still protecting the Mondar DNA. It speaks to Stan through the speaker on the controller, momentarily giving away their covert position. A tense moment passes as the group prepares to bolt. For now, they're safe. Phew! Stan introduces the visiting AI to Oppie's internal AI used for enhancing its photographs. Stan successfully pairs the two AIs to work together. Levinson manages to hack into an unknown solar database signal. He begins to perform more intensive research on the octophage. They have been repurposed to sense biological life forms. Levinson says, "As long as we stay out of view and stay suited up, they won't sense us." Suddenly, from one of the tunnels, an octophage tentacle emerges. It snatches up Chorney. He struggles, but it's no use. It folds him backward, snapping his back like a toothpick. He's carried off screaming into the tunnel. A crunch sound echoes back. What appears to be his entire blood volume drains backward, out from the darkness, terrifying the crew. The descent. Carefully moving past the dark tunnels, they continue to descend. An octo is seen climbing up the crater wall towards them. Reluctantly, they all move back into the shadows. Jet is in the back and partially in a tunnel. Without a sound, she is snatched up by a tentacle. One of the suckers encompasses her entire head, silencing her scream. The sucker skin, now stretched thin, reveals her face as we hear her muffled cry for help. The crew turns as she is whisked away into darkness. Again, a torrent of her blood washes back out of the opening. The crew are devastated. As the climbing octo moves over them, Bellamy readies his weapon. Stan motions for him to stand down. As it passes over them, one of its large tentacles crashes down on the ledge, crushing Bellamy's foot. Not wanting to give away their position, Stan stifles his scream with his hand. Bellamy is bleeding badly. Stan has a plan. But before he relays it, he asks Levinson to share his homework with the others so they understand what they're up against. Levinson does so in flashback. We hear Levinson's voiceover. These synthetic beings were created by the Mondar and deployed to perform tasks in isolated areas of their planet, where refueling was more feasible than recharging batteries. Construction or mining benefited from the high-powered output of their internal combustion engines. These environments would require robust and powerful systems to handle heavy loads and operate machinery. But their synthetic systems need replenishing with a type of fuel. That's why they cycle in and out of that dome. It's a refueling station of some kind, I think. And their fuel is very flammable. Stan continues, now that Oppie has a friend on board with vast intellect, my plan is to have Oppie build a laser beam-based weapon from his camera lenses and destroy the refueling dome. That will set the Octo's clocks ticking. If all goes to plan, we'll blow up the nest and kill the rest. A final opportunity. The weapon is fabricated by Oppie. Montage. An assortment of glass lenses from its various cameras on board are disassembled. Oppie's arm drills holes, making a housing for the lenses. Its onboard arm assembles the laser weapon structure. It then carefully measures the distance between each of the mounted lenses. Solar panels fashioned with several mirrors now reflect the sun instead of soaking it up. It's truly an extraordinary thing. A test is performed while the shaft of the sun is just right. It works great. Here in the Kuiper Belt, they have to wait 28 hours for the sun to come back around again. That is when they will have full power and be able to shoot the laser, blow up the refueling dome, and implement their attack. Title card, 28 hours later. Snap. The sun is obscured by a large ship at the top of the crater doing a biological prisoner delivery. Levinson, being the navigator, volunteers to attempt to move the ship to unblock the sun. What follows is Levinson's sacrifice sequence. He hops on top of a nearby utility lift, carrying several robo-droids to the surface. He manages to sneak aboard the ship that's blocking the sun, just as biological prisoners are being off-boarded. He can see them being led to holding tanks for termination. Levinson makes it safely to the pilot's bay. Not bad. The sun is now in the perfect position for the laser weapon below. Levinson figures out the alien craft, powers it up. Robo-droids react. What the fuck? Levinson punches it and crashes the ship into the side of the crater wall. The rounded craft spins, spiraling down the ice walls of the crater. Levinson, inside, getting dizzy. The craft is breaking off humongous icicles on the walls as it plummets downwards. On the crater floor, the enormous icicles begin crashing down. Octophage and robodroids run for cover, but it's no use, it annihilates many. The damaged ship careens off the bottom and slides to a stop. With the full sun on the rover now, the weapon is registering full power. Stan remotely aims the weapon. The dome is in the weapon's crosshairs. A tremendous blast sends a laser beam into the refueling dome, causing it to explode. Many of the octophages are blown to pieces. Stan, Waverly, Presley, and a limping Bellamy emerge at the bottom of the crater in full view and come out blazing. Back to back, they blast the remaining octophage and robo-droids, tearing a path of destruction and carnage. Another large group of Octo is bounding around a building too many to keep track of. They panic. Out of nowhere is a badly injured Levinson, with a team of alien biological prisoners all carrying weapons. They are armed and join in the fighting. Our crew cheers. Many of the biologicals who are not adept in combat are being killed though. Waverly becomes surrounded. Levinson comes to his rescue and destroys several octophages. He doesn't see the one behind him and has a grisly death. He is torn in half by two tentacles directly in front of Waverly. Stan sees Waverly just standing there in shock. In that moment, Waverly is instantly batted by a whipping tentacle and thrown hard into a building. Together with the alien biologicals left, Stan and Presley narrowly defeat the octophage. They help Waverly to his feet. He's badly hurt with several broken ribs. The alien biologicals are grateful. Help is on the way from their government. The return. The Mondar data is secured. Oppie is a sad skeleton of its former self, the giving tree with no more to give. Stan must now say goodbye to what's left of Oppie. He knows it will have to stay behind. It's bittersweet. It pains Stan to remove Oppie's drive components. Gone are all of its internal circuitry and data drive blocks. He pulls the final plug. Oppie's dead. Waverly, with broken ribs, approaches Stan. A dilemma. He has found cages of unknown biologicals set to be terminated. They need to be freed before they return. This gives way to an uplifting and bizarre sequence, freeing the prisoners as they have no way of knowing if they're hostile or not. Dissolve 2. Waverly, Stan, and Presley are on the utility lift to the surface. Surviving this has all tongues tied. They all share silent smiles, and the mixed emotions are clear on their faces. The crew are back aboard Waverly's craft. Waverly, in pain, powers it up. A group of robodroids have followed them. Waverly frantically punches in the coordinates, and in a blast of blue light blows the robodroids backwards over the crater's edge. In an instant, they are back at Waverly's base camp. Babinski, Billings, Jenna, and Sammy all react. The following slow-motion montage shows our Kuiper crew being greeted them with joy and celebration. Back on Mars, a farewell salute to Waverly and Sammy, who are remaining to do testing. The NASA ship en route back to Earth and touchdown. Stan's redemption. Back on Earth, they are greeted as heroes. The crew who perished are saluted and memorialized. Stan receives accolades for his leadership and bravery, finally redeemed from his past. He beams as he takes in the moment. The Mondar data handed over to NASA now show thriving toddlers of a truly unique-looking species. We also see evidence of our new era of technology. How an alien intelligence gave us the keys to the car, offering a new era of exploration, knowledge, and understanding. Stan decides to return to teaching, but now as a respected figure in the scientific community. He is approached by students and colleagues who admire his journey and contributions. Epilogue. A final scene shows the NASA scientists working on new projects inspired by now-adult Mondar, hinting at humanity's bright future in geohabitation and space exploration. The camera pans out to show a new generation of engineers, including that former student who asked the question at the beginning, now as a full-fledged astronaut, preparing for her own mission. Full circle. The last shot is of the rover, now displayed in a museum as a replica, a symbol of the incredible journey and the hope for what lies beyond Mars.